Hi, this is a summary of our class of Monday, February the 4th. We began with a quote by the French writer Simone Weil. She wrote, "When you have to decide to do something, always do what will cost you the most." Now, I don't know how terribly well I communicated this idea in class. I suggested that this really comes down to a matter of, you get as much from an endeavor as you put into it. Now, she really means more than that. Uh, and it is this idea of costing you the most. I think what she's getting at, and this bears on every serious endeavor that we as humans engage in. Certainly the endeavor of taking this class for you. There are various ways we can do things, engage with projects in ways that are adequate. We're not talking about just sliding by, but there are various ways we can engage with projects, uh, undertake and complete endeavors that are adequate, even excellent. But Vey uses this language, always do what will cost you the most. So she's suggesting that of all of the ways that you can be adequate, the way you can undertake and complete a project adequately, she's suggesting that you do it in a way that is the most difficult way to do it. That there is an intrinsic good in the difficulty you encounter in the completion, engagement with a task. Now, Simone Weil brings a very interesting personality to this question. She was rather masochistic. She would always take the path of greatest resistance whenever she did anything, and partially as a result of that, she ended up dying very young. She died of tuberculosis, which was made worse by self-starvation. So her story is actually, if you care to look into it someday, Simone Weil, it is a fascinating story. But again, this idea, always do what will cost you the most. Think about this, the concept of doing something in the most difficult, most challenging way possible. And, think about what is necessarily better about that, doing things in the most difficult way possible compared to doing things in a simply acceptable way. So let's take a specific example. A student may have an assignment to look at the imagery in a Shakespeare sonnet. Imagery in a Shakespeare sonnet, a specific Shakespeare sonnet. Well, the normal human response would be to do precisely that. Look at the imagery, analyze the imagery in that particular sonnet, write about it, revise the writing, and turn it in. Right? What I suspect Simone Weil would have done is taken it upon herself to analyze the imagery in 10 or 20 or 30 sonnets. She didn't have to do that. That was not necessary. But she felt that there was a moral good in going beyond that which was merely adequate, even beyond that which was merely excellent, but to do it in the hardest way possible. That in doing things in the hardest way possible, there was an intrinsic moral good. I'll leave it to you to think about. All right. The second thing we talked about is your assignments. there seems to be some confusion about our assignments, and I tried to clarify that. I won't go through that again here. I will just remind you to always look at the assignments page on Blackboard. Everything will always be laid out there. The due dates and detailed explanations about the assignments. If you ever have questions about the assignments, write me, talk to me. You have my email address, greenj, the word green, the letter J, at farmingdale.edu. Be sure and write me. I love to hear from you. If you don't hear back from me once you email me, be sure and let me know. Sometimes I don't get students' emails for some odd reason. I will always respond to you if you write me email. Okay? But if I don't respond to you, you'll know that I didn't receive it. Okay, then we waded into this very difficult issue of whether Khirbet Khizeh is anti-Semitic. The proposition being that Khirbet Khizeh is anti-Semitic because it criticizes the behaviors, the policies of the very early nation state of Israel toward the Palestinians. That the criticism itself weakens the state of Israel by making perhaps Israelis feel less good about themselves, by suggesting to the world, being very open with the world about some of the consequences that occurred with the founding of the State of Israel. So we considered that. We, at the same time, in connection with this, tried to think about what Susan Sontag said about her responsibility, the responsibility she felt as a Jewish writer. She said, I feel as a Jew a responsibility to side with the oppressed and the weak. That's a quote. She felt as a Jew, she's a writer, as a Jew, she felt a moral responsibility to side with the oppressed. Why? Because Jews have been oppressed, I would argue, more than any other single ethnic group for the longest possible time historically. Now, the question then becomes, was Yizhar, the author of Khirbet Khizeh, anti-Semitic? Or can we regard him as having a moral responsibility precisely because he was Jewish to see and be empathetic with the Palestinians, the relatively powerless in this equation of the Israelis and the Palestinians in 1948? Was it something about his Jewishness that made him feel responsible to side with the powerless as Israel was born and tell this story about what he saw at the time of the Nakba? Now, this gets very complex, and I'm not going to go into it more here. I will post a document to Blackboard that explicates all of this more fully, and it is extremely important because it bears on writers' responsibility to politics and political engagement, and it bears on the nature of Khirbet Khizeh as a work of art. What is its moral status regarding its anti-Semitism, or whether it is or is not anti-Semitic? Very, very important question. In connection with this, we looked at the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's draft definition of anti-Semitism. That document is posted to course documents, and I would commend that document to your careful reading. Then we looked at the opening, the beginning of Khirbet Khizeh. And it is we talked about this in some detail. I will not recount all of that now. But the most important idea here in this beginning is Khizar's, Yijar's treatment of memory, his sense of obligation to document what he saw, to keep it from being erased from history, from memory. He realizes that he reflects on his own effort to forget what happened, to let daily life blunt the edge of what he perceived, what he saw at the time of the Nakba. But at the end of the day, he felt compelled to tell the story, which he documents in the novel. Be sure and look at the language on page 7, the way that he characterizes his the act of memory being repressed. He says it would have been, he was astonished at how easy it had been to be seduced, to be knowingly led astray and join the great general mass of liars. He refers to those who would send over to the ash pile, perhaps, memories that were uncomfortable. So notice that language, how he describes those who would consign to the ash pile uncomfortable memories, such as those of the Israelis' treatment of the Palestinians at the time of the Nakba. All right, I will conclude the summary with that, and thank you very much for watching and listening to this. I hope it's been helpful. Thank you. Take care. See you next time.